Raptors GM Bobby Webster spoken out on his expectations for Malachi Flynn after he's been handed the reins as the Toronto Raptors backup point guard for this upcoming season. Has had a very up and down preseason as well as start to the regular season. So we'll discuss that, including videos coming out of Darko Rajakovic proving he has turned around the vibes for the Toronto Raptors and could potentially unlock Pascal Siakam. And also, Dennis Schroder reacted to himself, making a little bit of history on his day one of being a Toronto Raptor. So lots of stuff to break down. Before we jump into any of that, guys, I was creeping through our analytics through YouTube Studio, and I saw that 54% of you guys that have been watching the vids, the daily news coverage, sometimes twice a day, news coverage of the Toronto Raptors, 54% of you guys are not subscribed. We're on that push for 30,000 subscribers, so it would mean the world to me if you guys could hit that sub button. But let's jump straight into the news, earn that sub for you guys. But basically, first thing we're taking a look at is Bobby Webster speaking out on his expectations for Malachi Flynn. And Malachi is a guy, as I mentioned, has been handed the reins with Jeff Doughton Jr. gone, Delano Banton gone, Fred gone as well, Schroder coming in, obviously being the new starting point guard, handed the reins, the Raptors' backup point guard, and Jack Armstrong asked Bobby Webster on the Raptors' sort of official post-game show, coming out, I didn't pull up the video due to copyright stuff, but basically, Bobby Webster was asked on what his expectations are for Malachi Flynn for this upcoming season, because again, we've had a few question marks, and they've been sort of ironed out over the course of preseason, given who's been getting minutes and who hasn't. But Flynn is basically being handed the reins as the backup point guard spot. So what does the GM, what does the front office expect from a guy like Flynn who hasn't really been given that much opportunity? And the first thing Bobby Webster said was the defensive end. They expect Malachi Flynn to be an absolute pest, to be able to lock people up, be quick, uses sort of Malachi Flynn is certainly a quick guy laterally and all this type of stuff. Get into defenders and be just a pest at the point of attack. Bobby Webster, that's the primary thing they're looking for Malachi Flynn. And the secondary thing is something that I'm sure a lot of Raptors fans are hoping for, is to knock down some shots. Because, as said, he's said it verbatim. He's a very quick guy, so he knocks down some shots, and then he'll be able to facilitate more. We'll be able to drive more because players won't be able to sag off, or we'll have to guard him a lot more tightly if he's just hitting at a very high percentage from behind the three-point line. So those are the two things Bobby Webster specifically is looking for Malachi Flynn this season: defense at the point of attack and knocking down his shots so it can unlock the rest of his game. And personally, those are two things I think a lot of Raptors fans are looking for from Malachi Flynn. But the issue is, even during just this preseason, even if we write off all the times Nick Nurse gave him a short leash and minor opportunities and Flynn wasn't able to be consistently sort of play his role, to do his thing out there in those short stints while Nurse gave him opportunities, if we're just looking to this preseason where he has been a staple in the Toronto Raptors rotation, speaking on defense first, there are moments where Malachi Flynn is getting cooked out there on the defensive end. And frankly, that's kind of unacceptable when, yes, he's not a 6'9" athletic demon that's going to be out there running a crazy sort of championship Bucks-esque lineup, right? We're not that team. We don't need to be that team in order to have a perfect defense. But if you're a smaller guard, you have advantages of being quick, of having quick hands, having high Q, right? Point guards are out there supposedly trying to be, the guys dictating the floor, especially on the offensive end, but defensively as well, communicating, being the extension of the coach. Flynn should be capable of doing all these things, even if he's not going to be a great post defender, right? He should be able to keep people out of the paint, keep people from getting paint touches from those baseline, straight line drives, right? Prevent those things from happening. We've seen guys like Kyle Lowry do it. We see guys like Dennis Schroder doing it at the point of attack on the defensive end. So Flynn should be capable of this. And frankly, he hasn't been able to consistently show that he can do that. Sometimes he gets a little overly aggressive, not necessarily with reaching, but, there's sort of a sweet spot you need to be in the defensive end where, if you get too close, it's just impossible to not get blown by. Anyone that's played basketball knows, it's really easy to sort of break down people that are sort of moving on their heels in order to stay up with someone, but you also can't sag off and be lazy and let shooters shoot open shots, especially if you don't have ridiculous length. And Flynn tends to at times get a little bit too close and then get blown by it. And also, last night I discussed it on the post-game reaction. There were moments where there was blown coverages where he was supposed to drop. He was his closeout to defend the corner three-point shooters, defend a couple above the break threes, and he just didn't really get there. There was miscommunications, and again, it's game one of the regular season. I'm not going to bash the entire roster, whoever sort of makes different sort of decision or the wrong decision out there in the heat of the game with a new coach, with a new system. But as the point guard, you're the first player on the court that should be figuring out those defensive rotations. So defensively, there are things left to be desired for Flynn, but hopefully it's a focus. Hopefully it's something he fixes in the opportunities he's being given throughout preseason and the start of the regular season. Also, the three-point shooting. Knocked down a 3 last night, but other than that, wasn't super consistent. So we'll see what happens with Malachi Flynn. It seems like the front office, seems like Darko all believe in him to be the backup point guard. So hopefully he proves the haters wrong, because I'm rooting for smaller guards that can facilitate. They're my favorite type of players in the NBA. So wishing the best for Malachi Flynn to exceed these expectations. But speaking of the guy that makes the decisions on the rotations, it's Darko Rajakovic, and he has officially brought the vibes back. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The energy was down on the Toronto Raptors last year, and after winning his first game in the NBA, the Raptors are pretty hyped. They were pretty juiced. They were giving Darko Rajakovic the celebratory water spray. I don't even know what to call this, But he gave a nice post-game speech as well in this full video here. But, it's just great to see it. Guys like Pascal, Chris Boucher, Dennis Schroder, all these guys, just be hyped up in the locker room for their new head coach, Darko Rajakovic, getting the game ball. The smile was great. I don't have the full clip here, but he's given a good speech for the team about how winning, it's tough to do. We can be a lot better as a Toronto Raptors team, he was saying to the squad, but things still really worked out. So, great to see Darko saying stuff there. He also was mic'd up during the game and basically was talking about, just candidly to his assistant coach, how much he loves the Toronto Raptors fans. So that's something that's great to see. You love to see a coach just, not in some PR speech, not into something crazy. He didn't have to say it, but being mic'd up, caught candidly saying how much he loves the Toronto Raptors fan base. Love to see it. Darko Rajakovic is definitely earning some fans with how he's managing this team, as well as just sort of his personality. He's a very likable guy, and he's also going to be winning a fan in Pascal Siakam in terms of what he's been able to do for Pascal, given a new change in strategy for this upcoming season. Because as we all know, it's been well discussed, Nick Nurse loved playing players a lot of minutes. Now, I'm sure a lot of players would be happy with, getting a lot of run, be able to get their points up and stuff like that. But over the course of an 82 game regular season, over the course of, being a number one option, having the defense focus on you game in, game out, playing a lot of minutes every night leads to injuries, it leads to burnout, and frankly, Pascal Siakam was playing like an all-NBA player for the first couple months of last year's regular season, and then dealt with some injuries and just burnt out as the season went along. So him being able to manage his minutes, manage his body over the course of the season will be huge. And Pascal Siakam talked about it in a post-game sort of comments, saying how Pascal Siakam, on only playing 34 minutes, I feel amazing. I feel like I can play another game. That's great to hear for a lot of the people that have been criticizing Nick Nurse for driving our players into the ground and, just getting injured a lot because they're playing so many minutes. The Tom Thibodeau-esque approach to star management. And we also saw it because Pascal didn't have the greatest shooting night last night, but generally it would be at the end of games where we'd see Pascal be tired, have to force up some tougher shots. But he came into the end of this game and looked refreshed and was able to hit 2 clutch jumpers against the Minnesota Timberwolves, who were making their counter punch, who were making their way back. And he hit 2 not super contested threes, but at the end of the game, when your legs are generally most tired and all that type of stuff, Pascal was able to hit them in the clutch. So maybe we're going to see a clutch Spicy P this season, as he'll be more refreshed at the end of games and all that type of stuff. So I'm very, very excited for that. And if we're getting a Pascal that's unlocked at the end of games, because everyone else can sort of pick up the load over the course of it, that will be huge for this Raptors team. But let me know what you guys think about all that. The final thing we're discussing in this video is Dennis Schroder reaction to a historic stat, because Dennis Schroder made a little, at least short-term Toronto Raptors history. I thought it was pretty funny, his quote there. But basically, a report came out, or this is the wrong report there. You're the first player to score more than 20 points in his Raptors debut since Kawhi Leonard. And then Dennis Schroder says, no, we're not starting that. The comparisons to Kawhi have already started for the Toronto Raptors' newest acquisition in Dennis Schroder. I thought that was pretty jokes. I talked about how on last video that he was a steal for the Toronto Raptors. I saw a couple people going at me in the comments because I'm still a fan of Fred VanVleet. I think he's a great basketball player. He's more accomplished than Dennis Schroder, but at the price point, at the sort of money they're getting, and the role that's expected of them, Dennis Schroder is a massive steal, and it's certainly the correct decision. There's no narrative changes. I don't hate Fred VanVleet. I don't think he's a bad basketball player, but if he's supposed to be your number 1 or 2 option on a team, it's just not going to work out that well. But he's still an amazing basketball player, things like that. But Schroder is a guy that has definitely impressed me, and I was on the bandwagon of joining Dennis Schroder. You can look back to the old videos. Obviously we were a little bit shocked, a little bit cheesed initially when Fred left, and then we immediately got in Schroder. We were worried that nothing else would happen and the team would just be, mid very much coming into the season. But, things have changed a little bit for the Toronto Raptors. And once we dove more into it, saw who Schroder was, the video literally the night of the Dennis Schroder acquisition, we were pretty pumped about. So go back, check the receipts. But just wanted to defend that because I've never been down on the Dennis Schroder acquisition. But excited for what he's been able to provide during the preseason and game 1 of the regular season. Just an absolute beast. Even though if he did have a couple blunders at the end of the game for the last one, Schroder's definitely changing the pace for this Toronto Raptors squad, and especially on the defensive and offensive end. So you guys are the best for making this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.